In today's story, we uncover the largest money laundering case in UK history, a criminal enterprise that saw hundreds of millions of pounds of dirty cash funneled through a seemingly ordinary jewellery business in Bradford. What started as a local operation quickly escalated into a nationwide network, with couriers transporting sacks of illicit money from all over the country. With connections to organised crime and millions in untraceable gold disappearing overseas, the investigation would take years to unravel. But when law enforcement finally made their move, the sheer scale of the operation left even the most seasoned detectives stunned. This is the story of the Fowler Oldfield money laundering empire and the criminal web that stretched across the UK. Fowler Oldfield appeared to be just another scrap jewellery business in Bradford, but beneath its legitimate front, it was at the centre of a vast money laundering operation that processed over £266 million in criminal cash between 2014 and 2016. The business acted as a financial clearinghouse for organised crime, turning illicit profits into gold that was easily moved and hidden. The scheme was simple, but highly effective. Criminal groups from across the UK, drug traffickers, fraudsters, and violent gangs delivered large sums of cash to Fowler Oldfield. This money was then counted, logged, and deposited into business accounts under the guise of jewellery sales. Once in the banking system, the funds were used to purchase gold grain, which could be transported undetected or even melted down to erase any trace of its origin. At its peak, the operation was handling £1.7 million per day. Couriers arrived from major cities such as Glasgow, Manchester, and Liverpool, carrying cash hidden in everything from sports bags to takeaway boxes. CCTV footage later revealed stacks of notes being fed into industrial money counters, with staff processing the cash at an alarming speed. These banknotes were then picked up by seemingly legitimate cash-in-transit companies, making the operation appear above board. Investigators would later uncover 3 key locations used for the money laundering process: Fowler Oldfield's premises in Hall Lane, Bradford, the offices of Stunt & Cohen's in Mayfair, London, and Pure Nines in Hatton Garden, London's jewellery district. Each site played a role in disguising the illegal origins of the cash before it was converted into gold and moved abroad. For a while, the criminals operated undisturbed, confident in their ability to stay under the radar. But as the amount of cash flowing through the business grew exponentially, it was only a matter of time before authorities took notice. For years, the Fowler Oldfield operation flew under the radar. The sheer volume of cash being processed should have raised alarms, but the criminals were careful, using legitimate business structures to mask their illicit dealings. However, in 2016, a single red flag triggered one of the most extensive financial investigations in British history. A cash-in-transit company that regularly collected money from Fowler Oldfield noticed an alarming surge in deposits. What had once been moderate amounts of cash had skyrocketed to £1.7 million per day, far beyond what a typical jewellery business would handle. The company reported its concerns to West Yorkshire Police's Economic Crime Unit, setting off an investigation that would take nearly a decade to unravel. Detectives launched covert surveillance, watching as couriers arrived at Fowler Oldfield's premises in Hall Lane, Bradford, carrying sacks of cash. CCTV footage later revealed the staggering scale of the operation, staff working at high speed, feeding bundles of banknotes into industrial counting machines. The money was then packed into sealed containers and picked up by cash-in-transit firms, seemingly giving it a layer of legitimacy. Further investigation led authorities to 2 additional sites connected to the operation: the Stunt & Company offices in Mayfair, London, and Pure Nines in Hatton Garden, the heart of Britain's jewellery trade. These locations were used as hubs, where large amounts of cash were funneled through fake transactions before being converted into gold. Financial records, forensic accounting, and over 8,000 hours of CCTV footage were examined, exposing a vast money laundering empire. The turning point came in September 2016, when police executed a raid at Fowler Oldfield, seizing £2.1 million in cash on site. Yet, even that was just a fraction of the fortune that had already disappeared through the system. At this stage, law enforcement knew they had uncovered something huge, but tracking down every individual involved, from couriers to masterminds, would prove to be an even greater challenge. At the core of this vast money laundering scheme were four key individuals who played crucial roles in ensuring the operation ran smoothly. Gregory Frankel, 47, was the director of Fowler Oldfield and one of the masterminds behind the scheme. He had a background in security, having worked as a bodyguard for high-profile clients, and used his expertise to maintain secrecy and control over the operation. Daniel Rawson, 47, was the co-director of Fowler Oldfield and managed the day-to-day logistics of handling and processing the criminal cash. He ensured the money was efficiently counted, logged and transferred without raising suspicion. Harry Rashid, 54, acted as a key middleman, transporting large sums of illicit cash and facilitating the laundering process. Rashid was known to have deep connections with various organised crime groups across the UK, making him a vital link between Fowler Oldfield and criminal enterprises. Arjun Baba, 32, was based in London and worked through his own company, Goldsteel Limited, to launder cash on an even larger scale. His role involved moving large quantities of gold, making it difficult for authorities to trace the source of the funds. The network extended beyond these four individuals. Police uncovered a widespread courier system, involving at least 14 individuals who regularly transported money from criminal groups across the country to Fowler Oldfield's premises. These couriers operated with strict protocols, using coded messages and encrypted chat platforms to communicate. They would identify themselves using a token system, often exchanging a specific note, such as a £5 bill or a US dollar, as proof of identity. The scale of the operation required extensive coordination. The money was collected in cash-heavy cities like Glasgow, Manchester and Liverpool before being transported to Bradford. Once processed, it was swiftly converted into gold grain, which could be melted down or shipped abroad without leaving a paper trail. Many of the transactions were deliberately structured to avoid drawing attention from banks and financial regulators, ensuring that the operation remained undetected for as long as possible. For years, this network operated with impunity, moving staggering amounts of criminal money without consequence. But as the financial records and surveillance footage began to paint a clear picture, law enforcement knew they were dealing with something far bigger than just a single fraudulent business. Bringing the Fowler Oldfield money laundering operation to justice was no small feat. The sheer scale of the case meant that investigators had to comb through mountains of financial records, track encrypted communications, and piece together thousands of hours of surveillance footage. After nearly a decade of investigations, the case finally made it to Leeds Crown Court, where it became one of the most complex financial crime trials in UK history. The trial lasted 19 weeks, during which prosecutors detailed how over £266 million of criminal proceeds had been funneled through Fowler Oldfield's accounts. The court heard how cash couriers, operating under strict secrecy, transported vast sums of illicit money from cities across the UK to the Bradford business, where it was counted, cleaned, and converted into untraceable gold. The prosecution presented CCTV evidence, banking records, and testimony from financial experts, all pointing to a meticulously planned scheme that allowed organised crime to operate with impunity. The jury deliberated for several weeks before delivering their verdicts. Gregory Frankel, Daniel Rawson, Harun Hari Rashid, and Arjun Baba were all found guilty of money laundering. The evidence against them was overwhelming, with financial records and surveillance footage leaving little room for doubt. When the verdict was read, Rawson broke down in tears, needing to be comforted by officers in the dock. Meanwhile, James Stunt, the high-profile businessman and former son-in-law of Formula One tycoon Bernie Ecclestone, was also on trial. Prosecutors alleged that his Mayfair office had been used as a hub for laundering the illicit funds. However, after a lengthy legal battle, Stunt was acquitted of all charges. As he left the courtroom, he was seen embracing friends and family, relieved to have avoided conviction. West Yorkshire Police Assistant Chief Constable Pat Twiggs later addressed the media, stating, "This was a sophisticated operation designed to launder a substantial amount of money linked to organised crime. We have successfully demonstrated its criminal origins and disrupted a major network." Although the convictions marked a significant success for law enforcement, the scale of the operation left lingering questions. How many more criminals had benefited from this scheme, and how many similar networks were still operating undetected? The convictions in the Fowler Oldfield case marked a major success for law enforcement, but the true scale of the criminal network remains unknown. Despite the guilty verdicts, investigators believe that many more individuals were involved in laundering the $266 million that flowed through the operation, with some likely still operating similar schemes today. West Yorkshire Police's Economic Crime Unit and the Crown Prosecution Service have continued to pursue financial investigations linked to the case. Confiscation proceedings have been launched to recover the criminal proceeds, but with much of the gold already moved overseas, recovering the full amount remains a challenge. Authorities are now working with international financial crime units to trace assets linked to the laundered funds, but so far, only a fraction of the money has been reclaimed. The trial also highlighted weaknesses in the UK's financial regulations, particularly in how businesses like Fowler Oldfield were able to operate undetected for so long. Investigators found that legitimate cash-in-transit companies had unknowingly facilitated the movement of dirty money, and financial institutions failed to flag the suspiciously high bank deposits. As a result, new anti-money laundering measures have been proposed, including stricter regulations on high-value cash transactions and increased oversight of the gold trade. Meanwhile, the case has sent shockwaves through the UK's criminal underworld. Many of the gangs that relied on Fowler Oldfield to clean their money have been forced to find alternative methods. Law enforcement agencies have reported an increase in cryptocurrency laundering and the use of underground banking networks as criminals adapt to new enforcement tactics. Despite the convictions, police acknowledge that the battle against money laundering is far from over. Organised crime in the UK remains deeply embedded in industries that provide opportunities for financial manipulation, and the sheer profitability of such operations ensures that new players will always emerge. While Fowler Oldfield has been shut down, the case serves as a stark reminder that the world of financial crime is constantly evolving and law enforcement must stay one step ahead.